Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the moderator of the session, Cecilia Bonefeld-Dahl.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the audience and applause. I'm delighted to moderate this panel today. We have distinguished speakers, and we are introducing the study that we have done on critical technologies, showing that Europe, unfortunately, is quite far behind on 7 out of 8 critical technologies. And we will be looking at how industry, policymakers, and a minister with a lot of experience, both from civil and military use of technologies, their advices on how we can actually boost the investment and uptake of critical technologies in Europe. So let me welcome on stage Valeriya, Ionan, the Deputy Minister of EU Integration and Digital of Ukraine. Please. Nathalie Loiseau, the MEP of France for the Foreign Affairs and on the Subcommittee of Security and Defense. Welcome on stage. Marc Vancoppenolle, the VP of Europe Government Affairs for NOKIA. And last but not least, Peter Weckesser, the Chief Digital Officer for Schneider Electric and President of Digital Europe. So we launched this study called the EU Critical Tech Gap. It's maybe one of the best studies that we ever did. And it's looking at 3 things. It's looking at China, EU, and US, and where we are placed on some of the critical technologies like quantum, AI, energy tech, connectivity, and where we are with these in Europe. It shows that we are actually leading only in one of them, which is connectivity. We are not far behind, or I would say at the edge of leading on green and energy tech, something super critical for our security, of course. But the West, we are quite far behind. One of the reasons is that we are super good at research and development and innovation, but we are unable to scale and commercialize our products. And we'll look into the why. Further, the uptake of a thing like AI shows that in China, you have an uptake of companies around 70%, where if you look in US, it's around 50%, and in Europe, it's 8%. So how do we actually make sure that Europe catches up with its allies on basically investment and boosting commercialization of some of these absolutely critical technologies? One of the things that we also learned, and in one of our studies called Learnings from the Battlefield, is that we have simple digital technologies like AI, destroying, and with drones, destroying for billions and billions of military gears in seconds. So, can you win wars without actually leading in these critical technologies? Can you protect your society without a private sector of scalable critical technologies? We argue absolutely not, and that boosting the investment and our industrial base is not only about manufacturing gear, it's also about boosting the investment in critical technologies. So I welcome the distinguished speakers on stage. And as you see here, we have 2 champions of industry. We have a policymaker that needs to also give the political incentives of this making this happen. And not least, we have a lady who actually knows in real life what the learnings are on how to use digital technologies, both in the civil sector and in the military sector. So Peter, let me start with you. So we used to be leading, and in some areas, amongst others in some of the areas where you work, we are still leading in European energy tech. So what would be the step of really, how do you say, building on top on that leadership, and how can we use the knowledge even better that we have on this area?
Yeah. So before I go into energy tech, I want to frame the discussion around energy a little bit and also connect energy transformation with the digital transformation. If you look at the public debate about energy, this is a very much supply-driven discussion. So how do we decarbonize our energy supply, which is a very important discussion to have. That's everything that you know. How do we get from fossil to renewable? Is nuclear part of the mix? Yes, no, maybe. And that is certainly a key discussion. But that change from the classical energy models with central generation to a much more decentralized model is actually a change where the transformation of our energy systems has to go hand in hand with the digital transformation. And I would go as far, the energy transformation is not possible with also a digital transformation at the same time. Now, the study that Cecilia has just alluded to clearly shows in Europe we are behind in many technologies, and we are particularly in the deployment of technologies, and digital technologies are certainly part of that. Now let me go for a second into the demand side of the energy equation. This change from a centralized approach to a decentralized approach of energy creates what we call at Schneider millions of prosumers in the future. What is a prosumer? A prosumer is an artificial word of a consumer and a producer of energy. Every plant, every home, every building will be a prosumer of energy in the future. Of course, production is mainly through renewables, solar, wind, and of course, every of these assets also consumes energy. I'll take your homes for a moment, right? Most likely, some of you have some solar on your rooftops already. You have some EV charging in your homes, and you have, of course, all the electrical appliances. And the future might be an all-electric home where a heat pump does the heating. So in the future, this home will become a microgrid, right? With a controller within the home that controls all of the energy flows. But there's also a planning component to that. When does my car need to be charged? When can I use my car as battery storage to really be a backup power and help stabilizing the grid? And now if you take this to the next level from the home or the facility or the factory that is a microgrid, all these microgrids will be connected to the utility grid. With this, the utility grid has to become much more intelligent than today. There will be millions of data points that are being fed into this utility grid. And the utilities of the future will have to manage and stabilize the utility grids with millions of producers and consumers at the same time, with all the planning components that go into this. And this shows very clearly, this is most likely the most complex control system that the world has ever seen. Right? And that requires lots of digital technologies, of data collection, of connectivity, of data insight generation, and then also controlling this. So AI, for example, will play a major role in the future of our energy transformation. And my message clearly here is the energy transformation, particularly the demand side management, and the digital transformation have to go hand in hand. And we can't ignore either one in Europe. We need to transform our energy systems, and we need to be transforming our digital systems. And this is why we need to be leading in all of them, and this is why we need to create the right boundary conditions and the right investment climate for both.
Okay,
sorry for the long answer.
Thank you. That was a very good explanation. In a minute, so you can think about this, I will ask you, how does that make Europe and our allies more resilient towards, energy shortages, blackouts, etc.? But turning to you first, Marc. So I said before, we do not have a challenge on R&D, but where is our challenge then? Why is it that we don't have the scalability, and what can we do about it?
Yeah. So thanks, Cecilia, and also hello from my side to you. So I'm from NOKIA, and NOKIA is a B2B technology innovation leader. So we are a provider of fixed and mobile telecommunication technologies. So the challenge, indeed, I mean, from an R&D perspective, Europe is home to, two leaders in digital technology, NOKIA and Ericsson. So from an R&D perspective, we are leading standardization and R&D perspective, but the big issue we have in Europe is related to deployment. If you compare the deployment of connectivity, advanced connectivity, to other parts of the world, like, for instance, the US or China or South Korea, we are lagging behind. And the big problem is that as the connectivity underpins digitalization, and digitalization is critical for the competitiveness of Europe, we risk widening the gap even further. Today, there is a gap of 200 billion in terms of digital connectivity deployment to reach the digital decade targets of Europe. And one of the big reasons for that is related to the fact that our operators do not have sufficient means to scale and to invest. So meaning that, for instance, the consolidation aspect is something that the next Commission would need to look at. If you look, for instance, at the average number of subscribers per operator, it is 4.4 million in Europe. If you look at the US, it's 95 million. In China, it's 400 million. So there is a problem of scale here that we have to address in order to enable the operators to invest more.
And Marc, how does that actually affect our security? So why are we less resilient with less connectivity?
So if you look at it, there is a clear link between connectivity and defense. I mean, if you want to be at the top in defense, meaning situational awareness, having direct connection through high definition audio and video, etc., you need connectivity. High-end connectivity. And that is what is lacking today in Europe, meaning that we are already late towards the digital decade targets, but even, in situation of threats where you have zones that are not covered by population, but that would need to be covered by connectivity in order to have a good defense situation, this is something that needs to be addressed. And for that, public funding is absolutely required. Public funding is also required in order to evolve dual-use technologies. What we see today is that commercial technologies are actually driving towards, military standards. In order for 5G, for instance, to evolve to military applications and use cases, we need to have funding in dual-use technologies. So this is something critical to address.
And I will come back to you after speaking to these two ladies, asking also, what is the learning, for example, now on jamming, frequencies, etc.? And are we already looking into how we can become more resilient? So turning to you, Nathalie. So you are one of the policymakers that is trying to solve all these, lack of scalability, fragmentation, lack of investment in the digital technologies. So this is the tough question. What can we do about that?
Well, we need a cultural revolution in Europe. We have lived with some certainties that have been challenged. First, our competition policy. We have thought for decades that small is beautiful and that we should avoid having European champions, as if competition was limited to internal single market, whereas all competitors are global. So we have prevented a number of our companies to grow bigger just because of our rules. Of course, consumers may consider that they are the winners. But when we don't support our manufacturers, we become dependent on other parts of the world, and we are lagging behind. The second certainty that didn't survive the reality check is that we are a unified market, and we are not. In terms of capital market, there is so much that needs to be done. And we heard about it for at least a decade, but no progress was made. So now it's the new talk in town, capital market union. Okay, let's talk about it, but let's make it at last, because we have a number of successful digital startups, but they don't turn into unicorns, and they get bought by other companies from other parts of the world, just because they cannot get sufficient money. So this is something that we have to address urgently. You may say, okay, we focus too much on regulation and not enough on investment. I would say that part of regulation we passed was necessary. In terms of cybersecurity, for instance, Nice and Nice 2 were absolutely key for raising the awareness of what cybersecurity means for businesses, for SMEs, for public services. And harmonization, cooperation are assets that we are putting forward. The Digital Markets Act is a way to prevent gatekeepers from sort of preventing other European businesses of growing. Okay, so that was necessary, we made it. Now we need money. And when we say that, national governments turn to us and say, well, there's no money left. We have public deficits, we have other priorities, voters want money for this and that. We need money at your European level, and if it's about investment, we should learn the lesson of what we've done for COVID. We were ready to borrow together because of a pandemic. And we were right. We saved our businesses, we saved our SMEs, we saved our shops, we saved our jobs. Why don't we do it to invest for the future? I know that there are a lot of prejudices, a lot of political narrowness, if I may say so, saying that, well, common borrowing is risky. Well, not investing is even more risky.
So I hear more European investment schemes in these future technologies, more harmonization across the different countries, and not living in the illusion that we can actually scale in nations. I definitely think that industry, we feel the sweet tones of that, and that we are very happy that you're driving this. I think Macron was the first to say there is no national security, there is only European sovereignty. There is no national sovereignty, there is only European sovereignty. That's at least a step towards becoming, harmonized across country on these things. So turning it to you, Valeriya, it's no secret that you and I have worked together on several programs to strengthen the resilience of Ukraine even further and supporting you on the digital journey. But more than anything, we have a lot to learn from you guys. You have been driving both resilience in the society through investment in civil digitalization or a civil society digitalization, but also in military. So what is the things that you look at now and say, okay, at least these three things we do, we actually see Ukraine became more resilient in the public sector and in the society, but also militarily?
First of all, thank you very much, Cecilia, for this amazing report, and thank you for embedding the Ukrainian experience in it, and for all your support to Ukraine, and for these great projects that we have done together for the past years. Generally, Ukraine is working to become the most convenient digital state in the world. And, I represent the Ministry of Digital Transformation, which is the newest ministry in Ukrainian government. We are only 5 years old, and for these 5 years, we have implemented a bunch of really very successful digital reforms, one of which you probably heard about. It's DIA ecosystem, with a cornerstone is our state super app DIA, which is used by 20 million users with digital documents, digital services, digital signature, and of course, this is just a very, very small amount of those reforms which we are doing right now. And then, when COVID started, we thought it is our biggest challenge, but then the full-scale Russian invasion started. And we had to shift our strategy, and we had to shift our tactics. And, even during the wartime, people have to receive digital services. People have to have an opportunity for, receive services, receive education, and so on. But at the same time, there were a lot of challenges, and there are still a lot of challenges which we have to deal with. And basically, okay, thank you.
Your mic says an odd sound. I think it's your earring, actually. But it's okay.
I'm very sorry. Is it the good sound?
It's
right?
perfect now.
So I will give you just several examples. when Russian missiles started to hit residential areas, people went to the shelters, and we understood that they do not have any access to news, and we embedded TV and radio into DIA app. Then a lot of people had to relocate from one region to another, and we have created a service to receive a special status, internally displaced person status, just in a few clicks. And then when you have this status, you have the possibility to receive social financial assistance through DIA. Now, one of the revolutionary services is e-recovery, a possibility to receive financial compensation for destroyed or damaged property because of the full-scale Russian invasion. And this is just a very small amount of services which we would never thought about, but we are doing it, and we are still innovating and innovating. And we have been able to create these services just from 3 days to several weeks. Now we also understand that there is a big challenge to transform the educational system, and we are launching our new groundbreaking educational app called Valeriya, which will be fully based on AI and give the possibility for people, for scholars, to receive the personalized learning trajectories. And this is how we think. We are right now rethinking how the old and inefficient systems could be transformed, and how to make it efficient in a turbulent world. So I would say that digital transformation is crucial for any government, and this is one of the cornerstones for the resilience of a state and of citizens. And then, you know, of course, because of the invasion, we also had to turn to innovations and to the defense tech side of that. So, and there are a lot of things which we've done for these years. First of all, we have created the Brave One Defense Tech Cluster, which unites private sector companies and startups and facilitates the dialogue between the government and the industry. And it's not just, you know, the typical meetings and hearing the ideas. It's a real support and help in receiving the needed information and receiving the needed documentation, just killing all the bureaucracy, bringing drones or any other technology directly to the battlefield for the testing, and so on. When, again, the invasion started, we quickly understood that we need drones. And our minister, who is also the Vice Prime Minister for Innovation, he was the initiator of the Army of Drones project. And at that time, in 2022, we had only 7 UAV Ukrainian producers. We understood that there are a lot of barriers in legislation. So we have changed around 20 or 25 resolutions. We made the procedure for procurement easier, procedure for exploitation easier. We made separate zones for testing drones and other innovation products. And today, we have more than 300 UAV Ukrainian producers and more than 60 types of drones, actually. So we are doing a lot of, I would say, even fast and dirty innovations on the battlefield, because we don't have 2 years, 3 years, 4 years time to create, you know, some big innovative product. We cannot afford to lose. We need to win the aggressor, and only technology, only innovation, and only digital transformation really can help us to do that. So, answering your question about the priorities, when it comes to the defense tech, we are living in the most technologically war in the history of the world. It will become even more technological. People don't have to fight. And that actually means that we would have to invest more and more in drones with automated targeting, in robots, in swarms of drones, swarms of robots. So imagine like synchronized, for example, drone attacks, which would help us to liberate our territories. So to liberate our territories, and so on. So I think that everything which is related to this topic specifically, it should become one of the priority.
Thank you so much. So the learnings, remember you can ask questions on the Slido, so don't hesitate. Please do ask a question to the panel so we have some time afterwards. So what you are saying is, not only have you made through your, platform that was meant for driver's license and, other usual services, you have made the society more resilient. You can give them news. You can now give them, even though they're in shelters, you can give them education. You can give them moral and economic support for any damages to their houses, which really keeps the moral of the people and the resilience of the society up. And then, of course, you have the battlefield on top, where you are investing heavily in drones, AI, and these kind of technologies. So it's a dual use of strategy, where you need connectivity, you need energy tech, you need AI, but really for targeted things for resilience of this society.
Just one short comment. Absolutely right. So I just wanted to say that what is resilience? I think that the biggest component of resilience is agility. So you have to really all the time move fast and not be afraid to change things in the process. And that's one of the things which I think, everyone could do better.
So I'll jump to you, Nathalie, because, I mean, this is what we typically don't have in European politics, right? It takes forever, we need to decide, then we invent like a big project, and then we talk about it, and then it turns into, a very long process. So how can we embed this in, how can we, now with a new mandate, new commission, new government in France also, what is this, how do we embed this chance of learning the agility and changing the things that doesn't work?
You're right. The European decision-making process is slow. Not always. Ukraine was a crash test for us, and we managed to be faster than ever when we decided to provide military support to Ukraine. It was a decision made in 72 hours. When we decided to support manufacturing of ammunition for Ukraine, the name of the legislation was quite telling. It was called ASAP, and we adopted it ASAP. It took 6 weeks. So we can do better when we have an urgency. But we have to find red tape, we have to fight bureaucracy, we have to fight different layers of people who think they are smarter than the decision makers. We in Brussels never want things to be slow, but then very often it turns to national decision makers to turn it into reality, and sometimes local decision makers, and you add layers and layers of people changing little things, making them more complex and repulsive for manufacturers, for instance, for businesses. So this, we have to fight against it. Ursula von der Leyen confirmed that she wants a commissioner fighting this bureaucracy, simplifying the processes as much as possible, but we have to remain a democratic institution. That means that people have to bring their voices to the conversation, and we have to be more open to businesses, civil society, because we know something for certain. There is no difference between civilian and military, between civil society initiatives and state-sponsored initiatives. There should not be these red lines and borders. We have to team up together. Easier said than done. But for instance, we have a research program in Europe. We are very proud of it. Horizon Europe. Well, labs are happy about money they get from it, but if I think just for a minute, this program was not able to trigger invention of a vaccine against COVID within the European Union. This raises questions. This program was not able to trigger the newest digital invention in Europe. This raises questions. I think there is too much nationalism within these European instruments. For instance, Horizon Europe or other projects like the European Defence Fund, they tend to spread money around, making sure that small businesses and big businesses get it, that small labs and big labs get it, that small countries and big countries get it. It sounds fair. I'm not sure it's efficient. We should focus on centers of excellence. We should not shy away from realizing that some businesses are better on some special instruments. Some countries are better. Some labs are better. And we should put all our efforts on the best ones. European champions is not a gross word.
Good. I hear like we are one team. We're actually not 27 different entities, and we can learn and we will disrupt. So we are onto that challenge. So I have a few, I'm going to take a few quick questions here, and then I have some really interesting questions also on the European Parliament and other things here. So I asked you, Marc, before, how does it make us more resilient? I mean, what are the latest innovations that you see on making, connectivity, boosting resilience in Europe and beyond? What's the next wave of innovations that you are coming up with boosting resilience?
So the first thing I would say is that, it's very important for, if you look at technology, that it is secure, and that security is not an afterthought, that it's baked in from the beginning, from the chip level, when new innovations are being made. So that's, I think, absolutely critical. The second aspect is that when deploying technology, please use trusted technology. There is a lot of technology available, but it's not always from trusted sources. So that's the second element. The third element you talked about, towards the next steps, quantum. Quantum will absolutely be critical in the next phases. With quantum computers, we are able to decrypt encrypted traffic flows that are flowing today. So we should make sure that, we get to quantum safe networks and everything related to that. And also, I would say the legislation about it, because adopting quantum safe technology will have to be coordinated across Europe. So let's not have every member state, doing their own thing and, uncoordinated about timing of implementation, etc., because then we again lack the digital single market that we are after.
Super. And I remember when we had the GDPR, the data protection laws, the one who has the biggest quantum computer can crack any code in seconds. So, I mean, again, against attackers, we are helpless if we do not lead in technologies, right? So quantum, absolutely one of the key technologies that we need to be, in advance. So, Peter. So now we heard, Europe is slow, la 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 la. Are there actually things that we can do? If, as a business leader, looking at what can the Commission, what can the institutions around this innovative environment, what works for you guys? What is it that you need? Because, I mean, we all know that now. It's the industry who innovates. It's no longer the military innovations that goes to industry, it's the industry innovation that goes to military. So what do you need? What is it that works?
So probably a couple of things, and I want to build on what Valeriya said. In Ukraine, there was a special boundary environment created by the innovation, right? And Ukraine had to become very innovative how to respond to this. Now, if I compare that to how we usually operate, particularly in the EU, we have the tendency in the EU first to create a very complex regulation that covers any rare case that could come up in strange circumstances. And what the Ukraine just did is really following the startup principles, right? Creating an opportunity to have a minimum viable product, not only one, but many, obviously, and test them in a real-life scenario as quickly as possible. I think we can learn from that. How can we in the EU, before we create huge regulations, how can we create safe spaces to test new products and services? And think about the regulation later, once we have understood what the new products and services can deliver, what the potential risks are that come with that. And I'm not saying that we do not need regulation, but I believe Europe needs to switch much more quickly from great technologies that we have. So actually we have access to technology. We have in many areas lots of great research and create that technology, but we are not good in deploying and commercializing these technologies. Maybe one idea as the new Commission forms is how can we change the model to create safe spaces to experiment, test new technologies and new business models. I think that's important, right? Not only the technology, but really being able to test the new business models. And then learn from the good and bad, and from that create smarter regulation than we do it today.
Super. very good. So let's sandbox it before we regulate it, because we actually have an understanding of what we are regulating before we start regulating it. Sounds like a brilliant idea to me. So we have a lot of good questions here. So I will start with you, Nathalie. I'm going to challenge you because you're an MEP, and I guess it's an MEP in here asking the question. Maybe what priorities should the European Parliament push to a new defense commissioner to deliver for defense?
Wow, you have 2 hours.
No, you have 30 seconds, so
No,
yeah, go.
I know. We have to get serious about supporting European defense investment. So far, we have started interesting tools like European Defense Fund, but they are very small tools. We have started supporting joint procurement, but in a very small way. We have to get bigger. We have to make sure that we support defense investment. We should have a European DARPA, which would support not only military research and development, but also civilian applications of this research. And we need much more money than what is in the discussions right now. When Thierry Breton introduced the European Defence Investment Strategy, he was talking about 1.5 billion euros. I'm sorry, but this is not up to the challenge. We have to do much more, and we have to agree that we have to get a bigger European budget. The European budget as it is now amounts to 1 coffee in the Hilton in Prague per European citizen per year. This is ridiculous.
So more money, more sandboxing, speed up the processes.
Yep.
Maybe we can use like ordinary economic theory of short-term, medium-term, and long-term. What can we do in a year? What can we do in 3 years? And what can we do in 10 years? And then try to put as much money in what can we do in a year. I'm sure that we would learn a lot. So another question for you, Valeriya. It says, how can Ukrainian experience be used to boost EU manufacturing? Or, I would say, development of technologies in this case, not necessarily only manufacturing.
Yes, thank you very much. I would just briefly like to echo about the sandboxes. So, you know, for example, we are very open to working with private sector from the world and from EU. And it appears in some cases that some products, for example, which are coming for us to test, they have to be improved because they don't fly, or they have a lot of sound or something, you know. But the product was like ready, but in the real conditions, you cannot use it. And it is really very important to test the product in the real-time conditions. And what we are doing, for example, in Ukraine with the Brave One Defense Tech Cluster, we're facilitating this process on testing and giving the feedback immediately. And I think it's like a really great thing. And when it comes to the question itself, I think that there is a lot of lessons learned which we could share in digital transformation, in ed tech, in cyber, in defense tech, and it all really depends on where do we start. So I think that it is a lot of strategies and great documents, for example, in the EU, but sometimes what I think it's sometimes missing is like a real vision. Why do we need this? It should not be like, why do we need a digital decade? We do have it, digital decade 2030, right? We do have concrete goals, but what is the vision? Like, can you answer me? What is the vision, for example, of for digital decade? So to become, and this is the same with the defense tech. So, I mean, there's really great documents. You could build on this, but what's the ground? And I think that this is the question which we have to ask ourselves.
Very good point. So another question here. I'm going to put it at the industry leaders, but I'm sure that also some of the other people here have a good view of that. But it says, among the EDTs, EDTs were the emerging and developing technologies mentioned by NATO. Are there niche technologies where EU has a potential to excel over other regions? So we all know that, you know, digital technologies, it's an international, we don't innovate like in small hubs, but how do we actually, you know, take some of our strength positions in Europe and like boost them, and what are they? So let's start with Peter and then Marc.
Yeah, I think there's a good number of niche technologies, and some are broader than niches only. Take the demand side management of energy. Clearly, Europe is in a leading position. We have actually not only one, but several companies that lead that space. And I want to make a bit of a more general comment before I list maybe other technology fields. I think Europe has missed out, particularly on the digital side, building some of the foundational technologies like cloud, like AI. I don't think Europe should now try to spend its focus, how can we catch up on these or copy some of these. Let's use what's available, right? That's pretty much commoditized, right? And the investments to rebuild some of these in Europe might be a waste of time. But we are leading in verticalized domains in many cases. In machine building, Europe is clearly still leading. In parts of automotive, Europe has really been leading. So let's use these foundational technologies and build our vertical technology stacks on that. And of course, let's make sure that this meets the requirements for cybersecurity, also for regulation that we have in Europe. And also, let's put our focus on the next foundational technologies. What's next? That's maybe quantum computing. That's maybe other things, right? So I'm very much advocating for let's use existing technologies and let's build the great domain know-how of the European industry to build on top. That also is true for AI. And let's not miss the next big things.
So what I hear you saying is that we actually have a lot of the technologies that is used, but we're not using them. And that's what you're saying also. We are innovating on top of what we have, but the first round is basically get the things we have to work. Do you agree, Marc?
Yeah, I think one, and also extrapolating a bit and agreeing with you, Peter, is that, you know, if you look at the industrial internet, this is something where Europe can still lead. I mean, Europe is not leading on the consumer internet, but on the industrial internet with the strong industrial foundation that we have. And you mentioned all these industrial sectors and these verticals. We still have the possibility to lead if we deploy, you know, 5G faster, and then also don't make the same mistakes with 6G, etc., etc. So this is really an area. There's a huge amount of data in the industry which is actually not used, which could be used to develop the industrial internet. And that's something that Europe can lead in.
And then, of course, as an alliance, for example, on quantum and AI, we are still ahead. If we look at the NATO alliance, we are still ahead on that. Moving target all the time, but of course, it's a race of security in general. I'm going to take a last question, and then I will give you a challenge. If you met Ursula von der Leyen, who was here yesterday, in the corridor, and you had 2 advices on how to boost, you know, resilience in society through digital technologies, what would you say on the way up in the elevator? So you can think about that in the meanwhile. So here, let's take the legislative one. There are many good, Louis, also very good from you on the Baltic Defense College, but I'm going to take, has Ukraine implemented any legal framework to facilitate the testing of new technologies, like experimental law or anything similar, and how can we learn from that?
So there is a resolution which is called Resolution for Experiment. So basically, this is the possibility to test something, but it depends a lot on the industry, on the direction, and there could be different, I would say, resolutions which we could use for that. So I would say that there is always a creative approach if you understand concretely what you need to get as the result.
Yeah, so I know that you have done a lot of changes to law since, of course, the war broke out. And I guess that is one of the learning experiences between you guys and the EU, where not only, I mean, we always talk about how we can help you, and no doubt that should continue forever, as long as it takes. But we actually have a lot of learnings from you guys, both on the legislative and on the innovative cycles on these critical technologies. So a big thank you for that. Good. Now I have 5 minutes left. And you'll be able to speak to the speakers afterwards also, so please also use that opportunity. I'm sorry if I didn't present your questions, but let's try to also get like a little bit. So you are meeting our president, Ursula von der Leyen, on the way up in the elevator, and she asks you the question. So what advice would you give me if I have 2 years to strengthen the resilience of Europe through digital technologies? It can be law, it can be investments, but concrete initiatives or legislative changes or focus areas. Please, you start.
I would answer from another angle. I believe colleagues will answer more about the legislation side for EU. I would say that there should be a very agile and comprehensive ecosystem of digital products, which should aim for all the segments of target audience, for all the segments of society. So basically there should be not just kind of a state super app, but we have to think about the education, healthcare services, about the investment, about the support of SMEs, and it should be a very connected, unique ecosystem which should work as a one-stop shop, which should be known for everyone, and basically there should be a very concrete communication to all European citizens why digital transformation is important, is crucial, and is a part of the daily life. So basically there should be a great work which should be done with the people of elegant age and explaining what concrete benefits citizens could receive from digital transformation, to increase the penetration of digital solutions and to increase the efficiency of them as well. So I would say it should be a coherent ecosystem of digital products which should be built.
So you're saying like treat the citizens like clients, actually go them and tell them about the benefits and what they can get from you?
Yeah, absolutely. It should be a human-centered, user-centric ecosystem, and you have to all the time communicate to your citizens why it's important and to explain it.
And to take the feedback, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, Nathalie, it's a tough one. What would you do? You have 30 seconds to reach, you know, the 9th floor. What would you say?
Don't be afraid of a Buy European Act. Because our competitors are not afraid of prioritizing their own manufacturers, and we are still.
Okay.
2 things. Better coordination of all the instruments at EU level and national level to push R&D, because today it's a mismatch and it's not coordinated, and in that way we lose impact. And secondly, more investment in digital connectivity, because connectivity enables digitalization and digitalization enables competitiveness.
Peter?
Probably 2 things. For everything that the Commission will do in this next legislation, two guiding questions. Is anything that the Commission is going to do help to create a better single market, to make it easier to do business in Europe? So that should be one of the guiding questions. The next guiding question that I would propose is the Commission should not be measured on all the smart and great regulation that it delivers, but much more measured on how easy is it for nation states and business to create more and new business opportunities.
Great. So listen, 2 big publications from Digital Europe. This one is the EU's critical tech gap, rethinking how we actually treat investments and scalability, and do not think in like 27 small, but also as Europe as a part of a digital ecosystem, and our allies with US, with now G7 being actually a place where we can harmonize standards, interoperability, and lead technologies to protect people. And the second one is called Digitalization of Defense, where we also talk about the learnings that we can adapt directly from Ukraine and the excellent work of this lady and, of course, the whole government and administration there. So please read it. A big thank you for you guys to listening in and for all your great questions. And a big hand, let's make Europe better in technologies. Thank you.